Your mom would have loved this if she hadn't flaked on being alive. That's what my stepmother, Diane, said at the rehearsal dinner into a mic after her second glass of wine. My dad laughed. So did a few others. But the silence that followed from my side of the room was louder than any toast. I stared at them, the man who raised me and the woman who replaced the one person who never made me feel small. They stood under fairy lights beside the wedding cake I'd paid for, mocking my late mother like it was a game. And that was the moment I knew. There wouldn't be a wedding tomorrow. Not for me. Not with them in the front row. Not with a father who once swore on my mother's hospital bed that he'd always protect her memory, then sold it off to entertain his new wife's friends. I didn't say a word that night. I didn't cry. I didn't confront them. I excused myself before dessert, went back to my hotel room, took off the engagement ring, and opened my laptop. Within the hour, I had removed my name from their mortgage account, the one I co-signed 2 years ago to help them get a better rate when Dad's credit was in the toilet. I also canceled every automatic bill linked to my account, water, gas, cable, HOA security. And I sent one text to my ex-fiancé, Brian. I'm not walking into a family that spits on my mother's memory. We're done. No ceremony, no speech, just clarity. By morning, there were missed calls from every direction. Brian, Diane, my father, even one of Diane's friends, texting to ask if I was overreacting. I wasn't reacting at all. I was done. At 9 a.m., I walked into the wedding venue, pulled the planner aside, and canceled everything in person. I paid the penalty fees on the spot, told the florist to donate the arrangements, handed the caterer a tip, and told them to take the food to the local shelter. And I left. Now, 72 hours later, I've received 5 voicemails from my father, 3 crying messages from Diane, and 1 panic knock at my door. I haven't answered any of them, because they weren't laughing now, and I wasn't saving them this time. My mother, Evelyn, died when I was 16. Ovarian cancer, the kind that creeps in quietly and doesn't wait for goodbyes. She was gone within 6 months of diagnosis. 1 minute she was laughing with me in the kitchen, making burnt lasagna from memory. The next, she was losing her hair in a sterile room while my dad started showing up late to the hospital. He didn't take her death well, but he didn't fall apart either. He redirected. He became colder, efficient, a man who filed grief away like an overdue tax form. He packed up my mother's things within 2 weeks of the funeral. Her clothes, her books, the paintings she'd made when she still believed in joy, all boxed up and stored to keep the house neutral. I cried when I saw him, painting over the yellow walls in the kitchen. Too loud, he said. We need clean lines now. I didn't know then that clean lines meant making room for someone else. Her name was Diane. She was the woman from the mortgage office, the one who helped refinance our house 6 months after Mom died. Blonde, sharp, perfectly polished. She didn't like clutter or emotional heaviness, as she once told me while removing my mother's old photos from the hallway. By the time I graduated high school, Diane was living with us. By college, they were married. Diane never pretended to like me. She liked control. She liked throwing suggestions about how I should dress, who I should date, what my career should be. She called my mother fragile and soft. Once she said, I admire your mom's kindness, but she wasn't exactly built for the real world, was she? I nearly walked out that night, but I stayed. For my dad. I stayed through the birthdays he forgot. Through the holidays where my mother's name was never mentioned. Through the dinner conversations where Diane dominated every subject and Dad followed her cue like a trained dog. I stayed when they asked me to co-sign the mortgage on their new place, saying it would be temporary, just until Dad rebuilt his credit. I stayed when they wanted me to host Thanksgiving at my place, but asked me to avoid cooking anything your mom used to make. It's too heavy. And I stayed when Brian proposed, and Diane offered to plan the wedding because you don't have a mom to do that for you, and I know what I'm doing. But I think I knew deep down, the minute I let her touch my mother's memory with those claws, it was only a matter of time before they went for the throat. They waited until the rehearsal dinner. They didn't expect me to walk away. And they definitely didn't expect me to take everything I'd given back. There's a kind of betrayal that doesn't come with screaming or slammed doors. It comes with eye rolls when you speak, with polite corrections in front of strangers, with being treated like a guest in your own memories. By the time the wedding planning hit full speed, I had already started seeing the cracks. The first was when Diane accidentally left my mom off the photo slideshow we'd created for the reception. I had uploaded childhood photos, beach days, birthday parties, the last Mother's Day we spent together. The final edit came back with Diane's spa weekends and group shots of her extended family, but not one photo of Evelyn. When I asked about it, she waved her hand. The vibe needed to be more celebratory. Your mother's pictures felt a bit dated. Dated. Like Evelyn was a trend that had gone out of style. Dad didn't say anything, just rubbed his temple and said, "Let's not make this a big deal." It was always me making it a big deal. Like when I told Diane I wanted to wear my mother's earrings, delicate sapphire studs she wore her own wedding, and she replied, "Oh, those tiny things." I was going to surprise you with something elegant from my collection. Like when she insisted on choosing the florist because, frankly, your taste is a little muted. Like when my father laughed when she said it. I started having dreams. My mom standing at the edge of the ceremony, silent, watching, distant, fading. I brushed them off, told myself I was being overly sensitive, that families are messy and weddings are stressful. Until one night, 2 weeks before the rehearsal dinner, I overheard a conversation in the kitchen. Diane was on the phone. It's not my fault she still worships a woman who died over a decade ago. Honestly, Evelyn was weak. Sweet, sure, but useless. I'm the one cleaning up the mess she left behind. And then laughter. My father's. Not a loud one, but the soft, complicit kind, the kind that says, "This is fine." I stood outside the doorway for a full minute. Didn't speak. Didn't cry. Just listened. And something in me shifted. Not all at once, but enough. Enough to start asking myself why I was walking into a marriage with people who couldn't even pretend to respect the woman who made me who I am. Enough to realize that love without loyalty is just performance. And I had performed long enough. I didn't walk out of that rehearsal dinner with rage in my chest. I walked out with a checklist. By the time I reached my hotel room, I had already decided I wasn't going to cry or explain or beg someone to see the damage they were doing. I had done that for years. I'd played the dutiful daughter, the peacekeeper, the one who understood. They never understood me, but they understood what I gave them: financial security, social status, someone to blame when things got messy. So I decided to give them the one thing they really deserved: silence and consequences. The first thing I did was log into the mortgage portal. I still had co-signer access. 2 years ago, they couldn't qualify for the house they wanted on their own. My dad's credit was still wrecked from a failed investment Diane had pushed him into, and her income was complicated. So I added my name just to help. They never once missed a payment, because I set up auto pay for my account for the first 6 months. And when I tried to remove myself last year, Diane called me dramatic, and my dad said, "Just give it time. We're family." But family ended at that microphone. So I submitted the official request to remove my name as co-signer and owner. My credit was no longer their crutch. Next, I went through every bill tied to my account. Gas, electric, water, internet, HOA, security system. I'd helped them set all of it up. They weren't tech savvy, and I handled the paperwork, which meant most of it still in my name, still billed to me. I canceled all of it in under 30 minutes. I didn't leave them in danger, just discomfort. The mortgage would now be reassessed without my support. Their rate would spike. Their utilities would shut down unless they noticed in time. And their beautiful life, the one they built by burying my mother's memory, would finally cost them something. Then I sent one text to the venue coordinator. Wedding canceled. Deposit is yours. Please donate the food to a shelter and return the florals if possible. I'll cover penalties. No questions. The next morning, I woke up to missed calls. My father's name, Diane's, my ex-fiancée's mother, all blinking on my screen like alarms I no longer needed to answer. And when the first knock came at my door that afternoon, I didn't move. Because the door they slammed shut at that dinner, I wasn't reopening it. The first real fallout hit at 10:47 a.m. the next morning. A voicemail from Diane, voice sharp and cracking. You petty little girl. The power's been shut off. Your father has a heart condition. Do you even care? She didn't mention the rehearsal dinner, or her joke, or the look I gave her as I left the room without touching dessert. Just the bills, the things I used to manage. That afternoon, the venue manager left me a kind voicemail thanking me for the donation. The food had gone to a shelter downtown. The floral company had repurposed the arrangements for a hospice wing. Even the DJ, bless him, said he understood. Meanwhile, I got a frantic call from my dad's accountant. Did you really remove your name from the mortgage? This affects their interest rate, their eligibility. Did you think this through? I did, I said, very carefully. There was a long pause, then a quiet, well, damn. By day 2, the water was off. By day 3, Diane posted a cryptic quote on Facebook. Some daughters are born ungrateful. Some fathers live long enough to regret raising them. She deleted it 2 hours later after someone, probably one of her church friends, commented, "Didn't you make a joke about her dead mother at a dinner party? Maybe reflect a bit." The irony was that I hadn't told anyone. No mass texts, no social media posts, no revenge monologue. But people talk. People always talk when someone so carefully polished starts to crack. On day 4, my father showed up at my door. No call, no warning. Just stood there, sunken, a man who had finally run out of control. He knocked once, then again. I didn't open it, but I watched from the kitchen, quiet, unmoved. He left a letter in the mailbox. It was handwritten. I didn't mean for it to go that far. We were trying to be funny. She got carried away. I shouldn't have laughed. Can we talk? There was no apology to my mother, just excuses, just regret that something broke. He still didn't understand. They didn't just mock my mother. They erased her. And now they wanted grace from the daughter they taught to stay quiet. But I wasn't quiet anymore. And I wasn't coming to the door. They asked me to come to the house. Not through a call, not even a voicemail. Just a letter slipped under my door. Trembling handwriting I recognized immediately. My father's. We need to talk. Please. We can't fix this without you. Fix. That was always his word. Fix it. Cover it. Patch the hole. Paint the wall. Forget what was underneath. But I went. Not for them, for me. To make sure I didn't carry 1 ounce of this forward. When I arrived, the house was colder. Not just emotionally, literally. The power was still off. The heat wasn't running. They hadn't figured out how to re-establish the accounts yet, and the silence in the hallways felt thicker than drywall. Diane sat in the living room, bundled in a coat, her nails chipped, eyes puffy. She didn't say hello. My dad stood beside the fireplace, paper bills in his hand like a child holding a failing report card. "I've contacted the bank," he said. "They said the interest rate jumped. We might lose the house." I nodded. "You might. Can you just co-sign again? Just until we stabilize." My gaze didn't flinch. "No." Diane let out a breath. "This is punishment. You're punishing us for a joke." "No," I said calmly. "You're feeling what happens when someone who supported you stops pretending you deserve it." Her voice rose. "You think your mother was a saint? She left us with nothing. I built your father back from the ground up." "She died of cancer," I said flatly. "And you made a punchline out of her memory." For a moment, no one spoke. Then my dad said she wouldn't have wanted this. I looked him dead in the eyes. She wouldn't have wanted me to stay silent either. I pulled a folder from my bag and placed it on the coffee table. Inside, my official notice of disassociation from the mortgage, a list of every account I canceled, and a single handwritten note. "I gave you everything I had. You didn't lose a daughter. You spent her." He didn't open it. He just stared at it like it might catch fire. "I hope you figured out," I said, "but it won't be through me." And I walked out, not with satisfaction, not with hate, but with nothing left in my hands, and everything still intact in my heart. I thought freedom would feel like a wave crashing, but it didn't. It felt like stillness, the kind you only notice after years of noise. After walking out of my father's house, I didn't rush to rebuild anything. I took time. I deleted old voicemails, Cleared photos from my phone that only reminded me of who I had to be to survive around them. I moved into a small apartment with quiet neighbors, white walls, and a kitchen just big enough to cook the recipes my mother used to love. I made her lemon soup first. She used to say, "The secret is adding the zest last after the boil. You don't want the flavor to disappear." I thought about how she lived her whole life like that, quiet, gentle, but never losing her essence. It was my turn now. I started volunteering at a legal resource center for women, helping people untangle financial dependency, debt traps, and family coercion. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't loud, but it was real. The women I met reminded me of myself. Polished on the outside, caged within. Some were trying to leave bad relationships. Others were just trying to believe they were allowed to want more. One woman, a widowed single mom, broke down when we helped her reclaim the deed to her home from in-laws trying to force her out. "You saved me," she whispered. I shook my head. "No, you just stopped waiting for them to." At night, I walked along the lake near my apartment. No wedding ring, no fiancé, no title, just me, and the ghost of the girl who once begged to be included in rooms that weren't worthy of her. And for the first time, I wasn't surviving. I was living, on my own terms. A month after I walked out of my father's house, a package arrived. No return address. Inside was a photo album, dusty old. The leather cracked, the binding frayed. I recognized it instantly. It was my mother's. The one Diane had boxed up years ago and said was too emotionally loaded for the living room. It had pictures of my mom holding me as a baby, her laughing in the garden, her, and my dad slow dancing barefoot in the kitchen. Little glimpses of softness the world never got to see. Tucked between the pages was a note. Just one line. "I was wrong. I'm sorry, Dad." No signature. No plea. Just paper and ink and finally, silence used the right way. I didn't call him. Not out of spite, but because some apologies aren't meant to reopen a door. They're meant to close it properly. That night, I made tea and sat on the floor, flipping through the album slowly. Page by page, I rebuilt a woman they tried to erase. Not just my mother, me. The version of me that had stayed quiet to be acceptable. The version that co-signed mortgages and swallowed disrespect just to keep the peace. That woman was gone. And in her place, someone who didn't ask to be respected, but expected it. Someone who didn't mistake silence for strength, but used silence to set boundaries. Someone who remembered her mother not as a shadow, but as the spark. I placed the photo album on the shelf by the window. Not hidden, not archived, visible. Then I opened my journal and wrote one final line to close this chapter. I wasn't the one who walked away from the family. I was the one who finally stopped pretending it was still mine. And with that, I put the pen down. Not out of bitterness, but peace. Because letting go isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the beginning of everything else.